Welcome to the Redbird Report, your destination for the latest on the St. Louis Cardinals. Here are your hosts, BK and T-Bone.
We took a break, and it seems like the Cardinals did as well. Welcome in with Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Cardinals are 5-13 since June the 30th. They're 1-5 since the break. They have been outscored 20-1 over the first three innings in that stretch. And T-Bone, it actually gets worse than that somehow. They have now played 5 of the 6 teams below them in the National League standings since June 30th. In those games, they are 4-11. And they have been outscored 79-47. Again, that is against 5 of the 6 teams that currently fall below them in the National League standings. In other words, reality is setting in. You are what you are. I hoped that it could be more. We had some optimism coming into the season. I think that was justified, given what we had seen through the first 90-ish games of the regular season, and then they fell on their faces. The rotation has plummeted back down to earth. The offense has gone extremely quiet recently. They're no longer hitting with runners in scoring position. They have a sequencing problem, and now you find yourself 9.5 games back of the Brewers in the division. Yes, I said the Brewers because they're apparently the best team in baseball now. You're 3.5 games back of the final wild card, but 6.5 games back of the second wild card. In other words, you're fighting 5 other teams for 1 spot in the postseason. You're done. Good game. See you tomorrow. The Cardinals are a seller. Well, last time we talked was 2 weeks ago, and we didn't feel this way. T-Bone, how you feeling about your St. Louis Redbirds?
Not good. Not good at all. You know, it's disappointing because I thought all year long, look, they had underlying stuff that you looked at, and you said, yeah, but like that could go wrong, right? Like this whole pitch to contact thing may not work. And I said, oh, they got a great defense. They can survive that. They haven't survived that. You know, we talked about the offense. What do you got to do in baseball? I keep saying this. You got to slug, right? Slug, baby, slug has kind of become my mantra. They didn't slug. And what did I say? Oh, the offense will be fine. And now the offense isn't hitting. They've made me feel like a little bit of an idiot. For my 2 beliefs, you got to have swing and miss stuff and slug the baseball. They didn't do either of them, and I thought they could be a playoff team. It is frustrating because the offense, especially for me, since the last time we recorded right before the All-Star break. They were playing the Braves. They were playing, I believe it was the Nationals, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. The offense was scuffling, and I thought, okay, well, that's just they're beat up at the time. We talked about in the last episode of the Redbird Report. Look, they are a team that's dealing with injuries. Arenado had like a weird finger issue, which led to like a weird shoulder issue. You had Newpar that was dealing with the rib issue that eventually put him on the IL. Contreras was getting drilled in the hands to where his hands were swollen. I was like, okay, the offense, it's scuffling because of the injuries. And I still think that was the case in the first half. I can't explain now the second half because you should come out of the break invigorated to get back into action, feel somewhat healthy. Everybody's dealing with something, and be able to try and right this ship when your playoff lines are on the line. We've talked about this since the first episode of the Redbird Report. Their playoffs were up till July 31st.
Yep.
Because we knew that if there was any kind of a tiebreaker of, hey, should we sell, should we buy, the answer was going to be sell. You should sell Ryan Helsley because he's a valuable asset. And they just have not been able to take off. And it is very frustrating when it's in Colorado, hitter's paradise. As Michael McGree says, like pitching on the moon. It's baffling to see what has happened because, yes, they are missing some pieces. Not enough to where you should lose to what is going to probably be the worst baseball team in the history of baseball, the 2025 Colorado Rockies.
They had won 25 games on the season coming into yesterday, man. 25 on the season. They were 25-76. Think about that for a second. That is so hard to accomplish. And somehow the Cardinals found a way to lose 2 out of 3 against them. And it's not just that. They lost against Arizona. Yeah. And it didn't just get beat. They got mollywopped in their 3-game series in Arizona. We're not competitive for most of that series. Those are 2 series where your offense can't fall flat. I was not surprised to see the Cardinals pitching struggle coming out of the break. Not a surprise at all. I was a little surprised to see Sonny struggle the way that he did. But beyond that, you're in Arizona going up against one of the best offenses in the National League. And you're in Colorado going up against a bad team, but a team that can hit in their own park. You know what it is whenever you go to Coors Field, right? You're going to give up some runs. Yeah. You have to be able to outscore your problems. And that is what has been such a surprise to me, is that they haven't been able to do it at all. The Arizona Diamondbacks could not stop allowing runs. It's been their issue all year long. It continued to be their issue whenever they went up against the Astros recently. Colorado, not a good pitching staff, dude. They love giving up runs. It is something that they are addicted to. But here they are, not giving up a run in Game 3 of that series. The Cardinals' offense overall this year, I don't think you could have asked for a whole lot more out of them. They're 13th in Major League Baseball, scoring 4.5 runs per game. Given the talent on the roster, given the fact that you're in the bottom 10 in Major League Baseball in home runs hit on the season, and we know this is just not a team that slugs a whole lot, and given the fact that their best hitter in Ivan Herrera has missed, I think it's 6 weeks over the course of the season, all things considered, that's pretty good. But then you watch it on a day-to-day basis recently, and it leaves so much to be desired. So I agree with Ollie Marmol's assessment. I thought the game on Wednesday against the Colorado Rockies was the worst game that I had seen them play really all year long. I'm not saying they quit. They didn't execute. They didn't execute at all. And it's a frustrating place to find yourself in, where you're one game above 500, and reality is set in. They're sellers. They should be a seller. And T-Bone, this is where I think the conversation does get a little bit more interesting potentially, is this the best thing for them? Because you brought up, I think this was like at the very beginning of us doing the Redbird report, hey, the best thing for the Cardinals last year was probably for them to miss out on the playoffs and to have to acknowledge what we are doing is not good enough anymore, and it is resulting in us being squarely in the middle. We're consistently between 80 and 85 wins, and that's not good enough in the modern-day National League. Is it for the best for them that Eric Fetty could not stop allowing runs, and that this offense has gone quiet, and that Andre Palante has seemingly hit a wall, and that Sonny Gray had a bad start, and that they were forced into acknowledging we are sellers? Is this the best thing for them in the long run?
I think it probably was, because if they were going to be a playoff team first off, let's be honest, we even had the conversation, I think on the last episode, of are they trading to get to October or to get through October? And if you're trading to get to October, you're just basically improving on the margins. And let's be honest, what you are going to give up for what was probably going to be just a right-handed bat to help them in the outfield, the thing you're going to get in return for Ryan Helsley is going to be a hell of a lot better than the thing you were probably going to give up to go out and acquire a right-handed bat. So I think it is best that they ended up kind of falling once again into this scenario, which it is they became sellers, because they should still get a very good return for Ryan Helsley. It's not as good as I think I would have expected going into the season, just because he's had some stuff that's gone weird. He's blown more saves this year. Fastballs, for some reason, not playing, even though it's at 102 miles an hour. Phil Maton's going to get you a pretty solid prospect. It's not going to be anything that you're going to go, oh, wow, but it should be something that you look back on and say, okay, I hope that becomes like Matt Swanson, right? A guy that can be a big leaguer for you, and I think the same can be said for Steven Matz, because he is a swing man, left-handed, could become a high-leverage bullpen arm for teams. I think it is the best-case scenario that they got to this path, because otherwise you're just going to lose most of these pieces, all these pieces probably, in free agency for nothing, especially when that report came out from Bob Nightingale that, hey, the Cardinals don't even want to tender the qualifying offer to Ryan Helsley, because that was where you could kind of hold the line of, well, we won't trade him unless we get what we want, or even if we are pushing for the playoffs, we can hold him, attach that QO. If he leaves, we get the draft pick. That's an okay win for us. Well, if you weren't going to do that, even if you were in this race, you almost kind of had to consider the idea of trading Ryan Helsley so you could get adequate value for him.
I just look at the roster, and what's frustrating for me, what's tough to come to terms with for me is, man, I had pushed back on the notion that they're far away, because I didn't believe that, because you look at Brendan Donovan is a good player. Ivan Herrera is a good hitter. Alec Burleson, good hitter. Wilson Contreras, good player. Nolan Arenado, good defender. Mason Wynn, good defender, solid hitter. Victor Scott, good defender. We'll see what he becomes offensively. You've got J.J. Wetherholt coming. You have Gorman and Newt, who are at least interesting. That's a pretty good collection of talent. And you look at the rotation, like Sonny's a really good starter. I think Matthew Liberatore is going to be a solid starter. Michael McGreevy and Andre Palante, I think, can be back end of the rotation types of guys. Between Quinn Matthews, TK Roby, Tink Hintz, Jerpy, Liam Doyle, I think you have interesting arms that could construct a pretty solid rotation. It feels as though it shouldn't be far away, and yet man, as I look at it and I compare you to other teams across the National League, you're missing the hardest things to find.
Yeah.
You're missing your Zach Wheeler. You're missing your, Bryce Harper or your Juan Soter or your Francisco Lindor or Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani, Fernando Tatis Jr., Manny Machado. You don't have those guys on this roster. You even look over in Chicago, right? I don't know what Pete Crow Armstrong is going to be long term, but Pete Crow Armstrong is the thing that really changed who they are this year. We've talked about Kyle Tucker, and Kyle Tucker's changed things, don't get me wrong. But the guy that has re-energized that fan base, that has juiced them up in the way that they have been, is PCA. Because this is a young talent that we have no idea if Tucker's going to be there next year. PCA, they believe, will be there for the next decade plus. He is a guy we can build around. We can construct our roster around this special, unique talent that goes about things in just such a different way. I heard the Fast Lane talking about it earlier today, where they were talking about superstars across Major League Baseball. And like they all have a different criteria for it, but basically, at least Stalter, his idea is, do I feel like I need to go to the ballpark to see the Cardinals play because that guy's in town? The Cardinals have had one of those players for a really long time. And right now they don't have one. There's nobody on the roster that even comes close to being that guy. Meanwhile, you look across the National League, most of these contenders have that. And I know this is a long-winded way to get to my point, but my point is this. You don't have that, and you're not close to getting that. Guys, J.J. Wetherholt, even in a best-case scenario, I don't believe he's that, right? Like, these guys have loud tools. We're talking about players that have, like, 80-grade power or 80-grade speed. And the Cardinals don't have anything approaching that on the roster right now. The only thing that could have potentially become that was maybe a Jordan Walker. Guys, I don't think it's happening for him.
You're giving up on it?
So how do you get it? I don't know the answer. And this is why it feels so far away right now. This is why for me, I can't speak for any of you listening in the audience, but this is why for me, the last couple of weeks have been so incredibly painful, is because you're almost looking at your own mortality in a way as an organization of, okay, so what does this mean? Where are we at? How far away are we? And what does it look like to get there? And the honest to God answer today is, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how far away you are. I don't know how you get the players that they're lacking. And I think it makes everything right now, it's easier. It's easy. You sell Helsley, sell Maton, sell Matz. If somebody will take Michaelis and he'll go, sell him. JoJo, sure. Like, I'm willing to listen on all of this stuff now. But where I think it gets really interesting is 3 months from now. What does it mean for Chaim Bloom? What does it mean for the direction of the organization? I think so many of the questions facing the Cardinals right now are so much bigger than just, what are you getting back at the trade deadline?
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think if there is only like one guy in the organization, and I don't even think he's made a debut yet in the organization, that is going to give the Cardinals at least what I think can be like, here is point A, now how do we get all the way to point Z, which is to get to what you're talking about, being a contender again, is Doyle for me. Because that guy's got the arm that they have been lacking, that maybe you hope that he becomes a number one, and we'll see what he looks like once he gets into professional baseball. But that's the driving force, along with maybe J.J. Wetherholt, because I think you're right. I don't think he's going to be the Bryce Harper. He doesn't have that 80-grade tool that you look at and go, oh my gosh, what is this? Almost what Jordan Walker had, right? Jordan Walker kind of had those tools. He hit the ball so freaking hard, but it hadn't worked out for him. That is going to be the driving force for them, and how they get back to contention. Like, if you're not going to pay the star, but you're not going to tank, and you've brought this up before, I don't know where that guy comes from, right? Where are you going to go find that guy? Because you think about what they did with Albert, they kind of lucked into Albert Pujols. He was a late draft pick for the St. Louis Cardinals and became the best right-handed hitter that we have ever seen, probably. So I don't know where they go. I think where it has to start for them, like my first thought process is they have got to start churning out pitching like the Milwaukee Brewers, like the Tampa Bay Rays have done. Because we were talking about this off air either yesterday or 2 days ago. there's a theme across baseball. You know, they say in politics, what decides the election? It's the economy, stupid. For baseball, you know what helps you win in baseball? It's pitching, stupid. Because you look at all these teams that we are looking at, right? Look at look at the Milwaukee Brewers. What is driving them to success right now? Yeah, their offense got hot for a month. Their offense is still terrible. Their offense is not good when you look at the season numbers. It is the pitching that is driving them there. You look at the Houston Astros, you look at their offense, you look, it's fine, and they just lost praise. How are they doing this again? They're pitching. They've got Hunter Brown, they've got Framer Valdez that are leading the charge. And then if you want to go on the opposite side of this story, okay, well, why is Arizona not working out? They have this incredible offense. Why are they going to be sellers at the deadline? Their pitching stinks. It is just that simple to try and point out. The only team that I would say is like kind of defying this is the Cubs. The Cubs have a great offense, but their pitching is still good.
It's pretty good. It's good enough to be able to overcome some of its own deficiencies.
And once you add some additions to it, like they are connected to every big name that is on the market, now you're talking about getting them back into that great category. Why are the Dodgers struggling this year? It's not because their offense is pretty good, at least in the top 4 or 5. It's their pitching. Their bullpen is terrible. Their starters are on the IL. Pitching is the biggest thing that is driving these organizations because it can mask everything else. You have a bad offense, your pitching can shut them down, and you try and win these games 2-1. You can't overcome bad pitching. Look at the 23 Cardinals. Look at the 2025 Cardinals. Those offenses, 23s wasn't as good as this year's.
21 in June as well.
Yeah.
Bullpen.
Those were good offenses. 23 again, not as much as those two that we just referenced. They couldn't overcome what is bad pitching staff. So that is where, to me, you have to start. You've got to start churning through some arms.
Hell, look at the Dodgers. The Dodgers are a team this year. They're a good baseball team. They are not the historically great level of baseball team that we expected them to be. The Brewers are a better team this year than the LA Dodgers. Nobody had that on their bingo card. Nobody. But that is the case because the Dodgers don't have the pitching right now, dude. It's all hurt. Mm-hmm. Like, if you looked at the talent that has been assembled for their staff, they've got it. Like they've got 10 different dudes that could start for them, but like 8 of them are on the injured list at any given time. So they're starting a bunch of guys that most of our audience doesn't know their names, and it hasn't been good enough. And therefore, despite the fact that they have scored 550 runs on the season, they're merely a good team because the Cardinals' pitching has been bad, right? We agree? Not been great?
Yeah.
The Dodgers have allowed 15 more runs on the season than the St. Louis Cardinals. Think about that. And yet they're 17 games above 500 because they have this historically great level of offense. So, yes, the story of the 2025 season is very simple. Do you have the pitching? If yes, you're a playoff team. If no, then you're not. The Phillies have seemingly developed a superstar and an ace-level starter in Sanchez. They also have, Zach Wheeler and Suarez and Nola. So that's pretty good. The Mets rotation has been better than it has any business being this season. The Brewers have developed everybody. You guys know the story there. Dodgers have been bad, which has prevented them from being...
the Padres, too.
Yeah, and I was getting to them. The Dodgers have prevented them from being a historically great team, and then the Padres has been really good, which has allowed their offense, which has been bad, despite the name recognition, to continue to be 8 games above 500. So, yeah, it's the story of the season. It's the story of the Cardinals, and really should be the story of what comes next for them is we have got to figure out the pitching side of things. All of the superstar talent stuff that I just mentioned, yes, it's important. You got to get that guy. None of that matters if you don't get the pitching under control at the minor league level.
And real quick, I want to make one more point to kind of reinforce this pitching thing. The Cardinals offense, since that series where they got shut out in 3 games to the Pittsburgh Pirates, have the 5th worst OPS in baseball. Or 6th worst, 671 is their OPS. Here are teams that are behind them, and you tell me if these teams have fallen off a cliff like the St. Louis Cardinals. The Detroit Tigers are worse than them. The San Diego Padres are worse than them.
Well, Detroit is 1-9 in their last 10 games, to be fair.
They have slowed down. Now, to be, I guess where I should counter.
They're also 60-43.
Yeah, they've been fine. They are going through a rut. But the Padres, they didn't fall like you, right? They're still in the playoff hunt right now. And then the LA Dodgers as well, another team that, yes, they are scuffling and they're panicking in LA. They're ultimately going to be fine because they've had pitching that makes up for this. And, of course, the other teams that are in there, Baltimore, Pittsburgh. What do they not have? They don't have pitching, period. And that's why they are way out of the race.
It's such an interesting spot to be in as an organization. And it begs the question of, what are you listening on? We mentioned all of the rentals, right? Of course, yeah. Helsley, Maton, Matz, those guys are going to go. We already They decided on Fetty. Bye-bye. Well, we should mention that. Eric Fetty has been designated for assignment. We all agree with that. It was a good move. What else are you listening on, T-Bone? Jojo Romero is a guy that I brought up. I think you should probably listen on him. I don't know if he's somebody that ultimately gets traded, but if you get a good offer, whether it's from a team that's not interested in any of your other arms or somebody that wants like a Maton plus Jojo to have 6/7th inning locked down on the right and left side, I think he's a guy that I'm at least willing to listen on at this year's deadline. Are there others for you that you're willing to listen on?
I think the only one with control for me that I'm willing to listen on is JoJo. Because bullpen he's like the only other effective one for you. Everybody else that you have, like Leahy, I think has a role on the team in the future. Or they're like guys like John King, for example, that I look at and go, yeah, there's nothing really there. JoJo's got swing and miss stuff and has a high leverage left-handed arm that teams will covet, and especially because he's got control. He's really the only one for me because I know a lot of people would look at the position players and say, well, they should try and trade Jordan Walker. They should maybe sell Mason Wynn so they create a spot for J.J. Wetherholt. The thing for me is I would much rather save those pieces right now so I can potentially go out there and pursue bigger fish in the offseason, right, when everybody is more in that buyer category to an extent. Because I think with like a win and a Sajaci package, for example, you can go out and get a really good starter if you're looking to revamp this rotation, which they're going to have to do. So I would say JoJo's the only guy with control for me that is really a sell move. The other ones, to me, I would just hold on until the offseason and use those as chips to go out and potentially buy some pieces in the offseason.
Yeah, I look at it as like you're almost being opportunistic with all of this. If there's a really good deal that gets your offseason started at the deadline, I'm open to that. Right? If we're being honest, Eric Fetty was that.
Yeah.
Eric Fetty was them starting their offseason early. They said, oh, this guy is $7.5 million for next year. We think he makes us better for now, but maybe every bit as importantly, he's going to be a part of what we're going to do in 2025 when we desperately need a starter and we would like him to be at a cheap price. And they bought in on Eric Fetty. So that's more or less what they did there. Hell, I think Jordan Montgomery was kind of that as well. Mm-hmm. It was not only about what he could be for them that year, but also, hey, we need a starter next year. We think this guy can fit into what we're going to be doing, and again, relatively inexpensive. So if they wanted to go that path, a guy like Taj Bradley, who was just optioned by the Tampa Bay Rays, I think he makes a lot of sense for the Cardinals at this year's deadline. Are the Rays going to for sure sell him? I don't know. I'm pretty skeptical. I'm always skeptical on arms with control getting traded at the deadline, but maybe. If they do, cool. I'm in on that. Another guy that's popped up in trade conversations recently, according to reports, is Dustin May with the Dodgers. That one's quite different. He is on an expiring deal, so you have the opportunity to just, buy him in the offseason. Go out there and bid whatever it takes to earn his services for 2026. Or you trade something for him this year at the deadline, get him inside of your clubhouse, see how it goes, find out, all right, can we do something? Can we tweak some of his offerings? Is there shaping that we can do? Is there pitch usage that we can do to make him a better version of Dustin May? I don't know. That would be for them to determine on the inside, but if they think they can, I'm not saying you specifically target Dustin May, but like if the Dodgers are already interested in Ryan Helsley, for example, okay, is there a scenario where Dustin May can be worked into the return, where it's May plus a prospect or two from their system? That's something I would be interested in going into this year's deadline as well. But yeah, just would you listen to offers on Jordan Walker or Nolan Gorman or Lars Nootbaar or any of these guys that are potentially surplus value position players? Sure, I'm listening on all of it. That doesn't mean you have to actually go out there and accomplish that deal by the deadline. But like Arenado's somebody that I'm definitely looking at right now.
Yeah.
If the Astros are serious about needing a third baseman, I would try to revisit those conversations. But my answer is there's not much that I'm saying is completely nailed to the floor here.
I agree with that, and the reason that I said I probably hold off to it in the offseason is because it's hard to get wooed at the deadline.
For sure.
And again, these guys will carry value in the offseason when you can go out there and all 29 teams will be buying into these pieces, right? Like the Sacramento A's, for example. They may like the idea of a Brendan Donovan becoming their second baseman. He's got a little bit more control, or even better, like Jordan Walker's a perfect example. They need an outfielder, boom, we can go out and go get Jordan Walker. We'll give you one of our pitchers. The thing that will be interesting is I love the idea of trying to acquire a starter at the deadline, doing a little bit of selling and buying. But what will be the inflection point on that is ownership willing to accelerate the offseason? What I mean by that is they would have to DFA Michaelis. in this case, because I don't think he's not going anywhere. He's going to block a trade, it sounds like. And I don't think anybody would want him, if I'm being honest. So are you willing to eat whatever's left on that contract that is prorated for the final part of the season? You got to pay him anyways. But why not pay him and go out there and acquire something? Or even, in my opinion, even like start stretching out Kyle Leahy and start getting some answers on some things.
Another option, and the Cardinals have not done this in the past. I don't know if they'd be willing to in the future. You could go to a six-man. That becomes easier to do at this time of the year because it's really only a month that you're playing short. Yeah. It's just the month of August because then in September you get the expanded rosters. And it does seem as though they're trying to not limit necessarily, but buy rest for Matthew Liberatore and Andre Palante down the stretch just so they don't run into any like crazy number of innings compared to what they had been in the past. So that's another option is you just keep your five that are already here. I know nobody wants to hear this option. Miles Michaelis continues to start for you down the stretch. And then you also add in a starter. That is something I could potentially see them doing as well. I don't know how likely it is, but if they went this route, I think they could probably make it work. The other thing is, like, dude, if they end up selling off some of these bullpen arms, they're just going to have a bunch of former starters that are in your bullpen. Like Gordon Graceffo is going to be out there. Kyle Leahy's going to be out there.
Munoz was a starter last year.
You're just going to consistently remember that series that they had. It was 2022, if I'm not mistaken. They were in Wrigley, and it was just like piecing things together with 3 innings at a time. Zach Thompson was out there for a little while. Like I think that was the first time that we had seen Zach Thompson at the Major League level, if I remember correctly. And they were just piecing things together. That's going to be your bullpen starting in August. It's just 2 innings for everybody. Granillo, 2 innings. John King, 2 innings. Kyle Leahy, 2 innings. Like everybody's going to have their chance to do that. Riley O'Brien has been going multiple innings at times. Fernandez, here you go. He's 2 innings, buddy. So I think that might be the kind of way that they construct this thing, and that, again, lends itself a little bit more to having 6 men in your rotation.
That's the case. Oh, yeah, I'm going to apologize now on this podcast. Dude, your job. Some would say, it gets easier once you sell, right? You just give guys opportunity. Dude, piece together a bullpen like that, like we're talking about, that is hard on getting those guys to the end of the season.
But it's the way that you have to make it work if you're going to have a 6-man.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be down 1 guy in your bullpen, and they have actually utilized every piece of their bullpen this year. There have been times in the past, most years, honestly, where like the final guy in your bullpen is just a break glass in case of emergency. We never want to go to that guy. Who is that guy right now in your pen? I guess John King is the closest thing to it.
I would say so.
And he's still a guy that, like, they use him. Yeah. You know, they go to him a decent amount. So I don't think they've necessarily had that same issue with the way that they've constructed their roster this year. All right. Last thing on the deadline. What do you think they do? Because this time next week, for anybody listening right now, we will do a live show on 101 ESPN reacting to the trade deadline. So we will have from 6 p.m. until 7 p.m., an hour after the deadline has occurred, we'll be live on 101 ESPN to react to whatever it is that John Mozeliak and Chaim Bloom, if they're working in tandem, we don't know, do at this year's deadline. We'll react to it on the Redbird Report, which will be played on 101 ESPN Live. We'll be reacting to it there. What would you predict the Cardinals will get done at this year's trade deadline?
I think that they will trade away 3 arms. They will trade away Ryan Helsley. He will bring back whatever is their best prospect return. I think it will probably be a pitcher is what will be their top target for a Ryan Helsley return. That's controllable in the minor leagues. I think they will trade Maton, and they will get a prospect that you look and go, okay, I see how he gets to the big leagues. And I think it'll be the same return for Steven Matz. I do not think they trade JoJo Romero. I don't think ownership's going to release Miles Michaelis. Whether you think that's right or wrong, I would be willing to do it. Not my money. It sounds like they're going to keep him. I don't think they do the buying and selling. I know like Jim Bowden, who does his articles, keeps putting them in the buy-sell category. I think they're pure sellers. I think they move Helsley, they move they move Maton and Steven Matz, and I think that are the 3 moves that they do at this year's deadline.
I think they sell more pitching than that. I think they sell Helsley, Maton, Matz, JoJo, and King. I think 5 members of your bullpen could be traded at this year's deadline.
I could see King because of a throw-in. I think they're going to hold JoJo, and I don't know why I feel that way. I don't get the sense that they want to move controllable.
He doesn't have an
arms.
option for next year. He's going to start getting a little bit more expensive. Not anything outlandish. Like he's fine, but I think it's like $4 million or something for him next year. You have other options from the left side. I could see them saying JoJo's the one that will get us. I think he could get you a good return, by the way.
I think so,
like
too.
a legit good return. He's got velo. His stuff has been playing as well lately as we've seen at any point in his time here in St. Louis. And if we've learned anything from Ryan Helsley, it's, dude, cash in when you have the opportunity with these bullpen arms, especially guys that aren't closers. And especially, in my opinion, lefties, because that is the most volatile position. If you start getting through more of those right-handed lanes, like, dude, the value starts to diminish immediately. He's also about to be 29. So I think that's the kind of guy, like, let's be honest. Are the Cardinals going to be a contender next year?
No, probably not.
Then sell him.
I agree.
And then go get yourself either, like, develop one or go find you a $1 million Phil Maton from the left side next offseason. You've shown the ability and the willingness to go do that. So go find the next guy, and then you can flip him again at the deadline as well. So I would go with those 5 guys. The other thing is, this is the rare year where you actually have coverage in your pin. You've got guys down at the AAA level, not for starting options. You have 0 starting options down there, basically. But if you're looking bullpen-wise, you've got some interesting arms down there with Swanson, Fernandez, Roycroft. You could go with Graceffo as well. Munoz is another one. Boom. You've just replaced everybody that I just mentioned as potential options for you out of the bullpen. So I think they go a little bit more aggressive with their bullpen. Do you believe they will trade a single position player?
No. I think they will hold those guys until the offseason. I can't see them moving one of them because, like, I don't know who's buying what they are selling, right? I don't think Arenado's going.
I was about to say, who do you think is the most likely position player to be dealt?
Oh, man. Most likely position player. I don't know. Wynn would maybe be my answer, but I don't know if there's a shortstop team needing a shortstop. Because I think they like Donovan. I think they like him for in the clubhouse. I don't think Newbar's going to get traded because he's got the injury. Same with Gorman. He's got the back problem. I don't think the no-trade clause guys are going anywhere in Contreras and Arenado. So I'd almost like just by virtue of process by elimination, I get myself to Mason Wynn.
I've got an answer for you. I've got 2 players that I think are the most likely Cardinals on the 40-man roster to be traded at this year's
Is this going to be
deadline.
like Hampson and Fermin?
Lucan Baker and Michael Ciani.
Oh.
I'm serious.
I know. I thought you were looking for like on the big league roster, like something that would be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they just did that.
I was, but I think those are the 2 most likely position players to be dealt. I think Ciani has a clear role for another team. You're going to get nothing for them, to be clear, but they will be moved from your roster to another one in a paper transaction where they now participate in baseball organized activities for another club. Ciani can be a defensive replacement plus base stealer for somebody. And Lucan Baker can fill the role that I've argued forever that he should be filling for the St. Louis Cardinals, which is big bat, hit ball hard from the right side against the lefty. There are other teams out there that have that specific need that I think they could maybe make some sense for. But beyond that, I think it's Nolan Arenado. I think he's the most likely player on the current roster, to answer the question with all sincerity, to be traded at this year's deadline.
Do you think, real quick, you mentioned the minor leagues. Do you think they would trade one of their catchers?
I don't think so at the
If you're
deadline.
adding a pitcher, I could see where, like, if they're, like, doing a buying move.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I could see where they've got a ton of them. Why not, like, Crooks?
Crooks,
Bernal?
they've got a decision to make this offseason with he and Bernal on the 40-man. They have to put them on the 40-man or they will lose them in the Rule 5 draft because those guys are too good of prospects to not lose. And this is the year that you have a deadline. December of 25, you have to make your decision on whether or not they are going to be on the 40-man roster or not. So if something presents itself that is like, hey, this is too good for us not to do it. Like Taj Bradley was a name that I mentioned earlier. If they're like, hey, we want a catcher. We would like to get an outfielder, Lars Nootbaar, and a catcher, Jimmy Crooks. Is that something you're willing to do? I would say, yeah. I'm willing to make a move like that, to buy low on somebody that I think can be a mid-rotation starter, and I'm just going to continue accumulating as many starting pitching candidates as I possibly can. If I'm wrong on half of them, cool, man. That means I was right on half of them, and that means that I'm in a much better place a year from now than I am today. So I would do that, but I don't think it's very likely.
I agree.
I don't think they're probably going to get that started.
I don't think Wynn's being traded. If you told me who's the guy, he'd probably be the one for me.
Let's talk a little bit about Wetherholt before we get out of here. 2 minutes on the one piece of optimism that you could have as a Cardinals fan. I have learned my lesson from recent Cardinals prospects where I try not to get out over my skis on any player, any pitcher, whoever. Like last year, Quinn Matthews. It was really cool to see what he did in the Cardinals minor league system. Go prove it to me again. And this year we're seeing couldn't prove it to you again. I think he might still eventually be a good pitcher, but right now he's not. J.J. Wetherholt is doing stuff at the minor league level this year that is, it's hard to describe how great he has been. He is now batting over 300. He's slugging like 900 in a very brief time at the AAA level. He has, I think it's 4 home runs in like 9 games there. It's crazy. I'm struggling to tamp down the hype at this point in time, T-Bone. I understand why people are incredibly excited about him, and they should be. This guy is really impressive, man. And I think he's going to be here probably for September. I think he's likely to be on the roster for opening day of 2026, and I think he will have earned that opportunity. This will not be one that is given to him the way that it has been for so many others coming out of spring training. I am fascinated to see what that means for their roster. Because as you mentioned, I don't think they're going to make decisions on that at the deadline. I do think it's something that has to be done over the offseason. Chaim Bloom has a whole hell of a lot of decisions to make, man, and J.J. Wetherholt's making one of them for you with his performance that he's had so far that down there at the AAA and AA level.
Yeah, they got 5 pieces for 2 middle infield spots. And like one of those guys is a lock in J.J. Wetherholt for me. And then it comes down to, okay, well, now I have to decide between Mason Wynn, Brendan Donovan, Nolan Gorman, Thomas Ajacey. That's the crunch you're talking about. That will probably be in the offseason. That's why I kind of threw Wynn's name out there as my quote-unquote most likely. And when I say most likely, 25%, 20%, like that kind of percentage.
Like 10,
yeah. Because I think you're right. He's knocking on the door. Now, maybe he goes through a rut here in the next couple weeks, and it's like, okay, the September call-up's out of the question. Just stay in AAA and continue to work. He continues to play, though. I love the idea of giving prospects that 1 month in that September window of, hey, get up here, get major league at-bats, maybe you have success, maybe you failed. Mason Wynn was a failure in that month that he was up here. But what was he able to do with that month? He was able to take that and go, holy crap, look at what Major League Baseball does to me. Okay, here's what I have to do in the offseason to make the adjustment. So if he continues to hit, I think it's almost a must that you have to try and get him up here and find him playing time. But I have no idea how you do that with the roster crunch that you currently still have in this middle infield that I think you're right, they're not going to make decisions on until Chaim Bloom is fully in charge.
He's played 6 games at shortstop, 2 at DH down at the AAA level so far. I think that's expected to change. They're supposed to be using him at second base and third base down the road. I think they wanted to get him comfortable at the AAA level first, but pre-game stuff, he's been doing stuff at second and third. I think that's the anticipation is he's going to spend like 50% of his time at shortstop, and then the other 50% will be split among DH, third base, and second base. So we'll see. We'll see how this thing ends up shaking out for J.J. Wetherholt. All right. Next week, as I mentioned, we will be doing a live show on 101 ESPN. So if you guys want to check that out, please do so. Thursday night at 6 o'clock, the day of the Major League Baseball trade deadline. I would imagine it's going to be a busy day for the St. Louis Cardinals as they are pretty much firmly in the sellers category. For Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll talk to you guys next week here on the Redbird Report.
Find every episode of the Redbird Report with Brandon Kiley and Tanner Hendrickson on YouTube or at 101ESPN.com.